Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bare Necessities podcast. In this week's episode, we have a very special episode. We're going to be joined by FaizSportsTalk. Faiz is a very prominent Bears YouTuber, so if you haven't seen his stuff on YouTube, go ahead and check him out, FaizSportsTalk. He's going to talk a little bit more about what he does in the show. But in today's show, we're going to be breaking down some of the Bears slander that we've been seeing in the media recently, including USA Today's 3-13 record prediction for the Bears. But before we get into the show, we want to apologize for the lower quality of audio that you guys are probably used to. We here at the Bare Necessities, we pride ourselves on having one of the highest quality audio Bears podcasts. And, you know, just because of some of the recording software that we used and some equipment limitations, we don't have the highest audio quality in this episode, and that's mainly on my part. I was traveling and I didn't have some of the proper equipment on me, so I apologize for that, but look out for the episode later this week. We're going to have the quality that you guys all know and expect. And a couple more announcements. If you guys are a new listener, welcome. Please subscribe to our podcast so you can keep up with our podcast. We bring episodes twice a week, and we've been growing a lot lately, so we really appreciate that. And then also, we just have a ton of new episode plans coming up. We're looking forward to keeping all of you guys up to date with Bears news and keep you entertained through this sometimes strenuous offseason. So with that, we have a nice long show, kind of being critical of some national media reporters. So sit back and enjoy Reece, Faiz, and I dismantling some of the Bears' disrespect. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Bare Necessities podcast. This week, we have a special guest with us. It's FaizSportsTalk. How are you doing, man?
I'm good, man. Thank you guys for having me. Can't wait to talk all things Bears.
Absolutely, and that's good to hear. Everything's safe with you. Everyone's safe with everybody on the podcast, it sounds like. So why don't you go ahead and tell everybody just what you do on YouTube? I know a lot of our listeners probably already know you from YouTube, so go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So first of all, I just want to thank you guys for having me on here. And second of all, if you don't know, I run a YouTube channel called FaizSportsTalk. It actually was just a channel where I would talk like main NFL, maybe a little NBA topics. And then I kind of started doing, Bears videos, and it kind of just snowballed from there because the Bears videos started getting a lot of traction. And because I am, from Chicago and I am a local here, that obviously it's my favorite team. And I think people just, took a notice to that. They liked what I had to say. And I wasn't going to stop. I kept going with it. And so it kind of, again, snowballed into this, what we have today. So the support's been crazy. So basically what I do is I post out a ton of Bears content, during the season. Pre-game shows, post-game shows, reactions, talking rumors, trades, signings, free agent signings. I did a bunch of, the analysis for the draft and free agency and the offseason. So pretty much everything year-round with the Bears I do and I cover on my channel. So I know a lot of people look forward to that. So hopefully I'll be able to keep providing that for them in the future. And
you've definitely became one of the Bears' premier YouTubers as far as fan goes. It seems like your videos are always ranking right up there at the top. People seem to really respect what you have to say about the Bears, and it's just been awesome to see someone finally consistently do it on YouTube because honestly, there's a huge market for Bears content right now. There's not too many like absolutely fantastic YouTubers besides yourself, working on YouTube, bringing out consistent videos. And, with us also this week, someone who has a lot shorter of a resume is Reece, my co-host here with the Bare Necessities podcast. How are you doing, Reece?
Good, giving me all the smoke, but yeah, definitely excited for this opportunity and everything, and amazing to be able to talk sports. And I've checked out your channel and seen that you've been able to diversify and kind of branch out with what you do. So definitely an inspiration, I think, for both like Austin and I, moving forward and what we want to do with this podcast and kind of moving on from them. So I'm really excited to kind of get into our topics and break that down with you.
Absolutely. Here at the Bare Necessities podcast, we always try to be really realistic with our takes. That didn't really cement last year, as I know. Reece and I had a lot higher expectations for the Bears than they actually amounted to, which I think was pretty similar with a lot of other Bears fans. However, this offseason, the Bears have been getting unbelievable amounts of disrespect in the national media. I mean, besides Nick Wright, who has us going, 12-4. It's been consistently just really, really poor Bears review. So with that, the Bears are coming off an 8-8 season. Obviously very disappointing after the 12-4 season, but we had one of the toughest schedules. And now it seems like this offseason we have really built ourselves up a lot. That being said, you'd think it'd be the opposite with the national media because there's been so much criticism with us. So today, essentially, we're just going to be going over all of the really bad Bears takes that we've been seeing. Reece and I were always really critical about the Bears and every single one of their moves. We try not to be homers, even though, sometimes I have to fight it myself. But this segment is called We're Livid because there's a lot of bad Bears takes out there. So the first one, we'll move right into it. USA Today's football columnist Nate Davis predicts the Bears to go 3-13. To justify this statement, he says the schedule is brutal and the offensive weaponry supporting another transcendent effort like the defense produced in 2018. More likely this franchise ends up cleaning house than returning to the postseason. I'm going to save my take. Faiz, why don't you start us off real quick?
Yeah, man, this is just comical at this point because to me, anytime anybody that I hear in the national media has the Bears winning less than, I'd probably say 8, maybe 7 games, I just don't want to take the take seriously. Because if you paid attention to the Bears, which quite frankly they don't, because, again, they wouldn't come to this conclusion, the Bears got better in the offseason at every position that they needed to. Okay, minus offensive line, which you can make that argument, but we still, by the way, addressed it via depth and coaching. We have a new offensive line coach. And so even with offensive line, it's not like we didn't do anything. But quarterback, you brought in Nick Foles. Say what you want about Mitchell Trubisky, and there are a lot of opinions. I know it's very polarizing what people think about him. But you can't disagree that the quarterback room itself didn't improve because it did. Absolutely. Nick Foles is better than Chase Daniel. Then you take a look at the other positions where, the Bears might have been weak. Tight end. I'm not a Jimmy Graham fan, but he's still better than what we had last year with an injured Trey Burton and practice squad guys, like J.P. Holtz and Jesper Horsted. And then you have Cole Kmet, who the Bears drafted, the best tight end in the draft. Everybody agrees with that. And so there's been clear improvements that the Bears have made at positions. And for you to come back and say that this team 3-13, that's a rebuilding team. That's an absolutely, like, where you're putting up against the worst record in the NFL. You're comparing it to that. So again, I just feel like they don't pay attention. They don't do the research. They don't look at what the teams have done. They just look at the quarterback situation and they just look at how the team did last year and they go from there.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair run of it. I think that the strength of schedule, using that as like a criteria to knock them, that is just
not even that bad. It's 13th, by the way, in the strength of schedule.
Yeah, Vegas has us at 5th worst.
Yeah, so I think that's just, that's honestly ridiculous to go for that. And backing it off what you said, I think the Bears, they got deeper and better at a lot of positions. I think that, whether or not who ends up being the starting quarterback, I think if Nick Foles ends up taking on that role, I think that opens up bigger roles for people like Anthony Miller that have had like those inconsistencies. And I think they're just going to see an elevation of play from, a lot of the weaknesses that we saw, last season. So I think that honestly, this defense has gotten a lot better. This offense has gotten a lot better. And the offensive line is still a bit of a concern, but, you got to let the new offensive line coach kind of, retool that, build in that chemistry. And I think Austin and I talked about this before in previous podcasts. As much as having good offensive linemen is crucial, being able to have an offensive line that stays healthy and build that chemistry is probably even more important. So, that's something that's a little bit more out of your control. But I think that the 3-13, that's a Browns kind of record. That's a a Detroit Lions kind of record. Even in the Bears' worst seasons, we'd have to go back all the way back to John Fox to see a 3-13 team.
You bring up a great point here. Us Bears fans have seen 3-13. We've seen a 3-13 roster. This roster is nowhere near what that is. And, right off the back, he has to, I try to listen to these guys, even though I don't disagree with them. So I always, I look into the articles, see what they have to say. Right off the back, this guy comes out with us and he says they have a brutal schedule. That's about where I just stopped reading and I realized that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Obviously, strength of schedule tends to play out a little bit differently than the initial rankings. But when you look at the schedule, it is so much easier than last year. So much easier than last year. And then going off of what Faiz said, when you look at all the improvements the Bears have made, you look at Robert Quinn, adding to the secondary. Maybe they didn't bring in another big name at offensive line, but they brought in a lot of guys with, talent. And then also all the coaching changes. Obviously Juan Castillo, he is a huge improvement in the offensive line there, a little bit more updated scheme. And, we were 8-8 with not only Mitch Trubisky, but injured Mitchell Trubisky. So, I don't really know what else there is to say about stuff like this. This is just a laughable take. I know Reece, Faiz, you didn't get to actually see our takes on the Bears schedule, but we had them somewhere between I think the lowest we project them was maybe 9 wins, and then we were talking a ceiling of probably 12 wins.
Yeah. So let me just say to that point, just by the defense, I don't know how the defense alone can't win you 5-6 games. So again, 3-13 is comical. I think we all agree. But yeah, for me personally, I have the Bears going 10-6. Now I had the Bears going to 10-6 last year. I was off 2 games, so it didn't work out. But like I said, with the improvements they made and the fact that, again, I don't believe the division got better either. Nobody wants to talk about that either. The Packers, either they got worse or they're stagnant at best. The Vikings lost a lot of key pieces. Stephon Diggs, being the most notable one. The Lions might have improved slightly, but they still have a big gap between the 3 teams in the Packers, Vikings, and the Bears. So I think all of those things combined with the fact that, like I said, the defense alone can win 5-6 games. I don't know how you don't have the Bears at least winning 8 games.
And the Lions have Matt Patricia. Let's not forget that multiple guys have wanted to leave the team because of their head coach, and we're still promoting him higher than someone who, even you can say what you want about Matt Nagy. The players love him, right? The players really like him. The locker room really likes him. It is something would have to go horrible for this to happen to the Bears. It's not likely. It's not likely. Reece,
one other thing I'll just say, and I'll kick it back to you guys, is people think I'm a Matt Nagy hater because I've been very critical of Matt Nagy last year. I like Matt Nagy a lot. I do. He won Coach of the Year in his first year. So my expectations for him are through the roof. So when I saw last year how, much better his play calling could have been, I just want better for him. And so to your point, absolutely agree. I think Matt Nagy has the argument to be the best coach in the division. I would take him over Matt LaFleur. I might take him over Mike Zimmer. So it's just my expectations for Matt Nagy are so high that when he doesn't meet them, that's when I speak out about it.
I've definitely been very critical. I love Matt Nagy. More so than Austin. I think Austin, probably favors or defends Matt Nagy a bit more than I do. I've definitely been down on him. I put a lot of last season's struggles on him. He should have worked with Mitchell Trubisky better. He should have worked with Mitchell Trubisky over his first 2 years better, And I think a lot of the blame from what happened last year falls on him. But, he does have a lot of potential. We haven't really seen an offense, we haven't seen a Bears team play like this in a long time. I think all of us have been watching the Bears for a while. This is definitely the best quality of play that we've gotten to see in a long time, even when they're struggling last year.
100%. And, I think that's really all that can be said about this. It's hard being a national reporter. It's hard to cover every team. I know we had a previous podcast where we tried to cover every single team. It's just really difficult to not mess up on, something. I know Faiz, you probably have some issues covering just Chicago teams because of how much information it just takes. So obviously respect for him trying to do that, but when you put together a claim as bold as this, you have to at least be careful as to what you're putting out there, to make sure that you're not putting out there something that's, as laughable as this. And I think this is going to age extremely poorly. So, now we're going to talk about another individual who has a history of things that age extremely poorly. And that's Jason La Canfora. I think that's how you say his name, but first off, he claims to be an NFL insider. I don't know what that means. If he's definitely not in a front office right now. Maybe he's CBS's Twitter rumor guy. I don't know. But he released his 2020 NFL team tiers where he ranked the Bears as the bottom with the Giants, Jets, and Jaguars and Redskins. And here's some teams that were above them, right? The Falcons, the Patriots, the Lions, the Bengals, the Rams, Texans, Panthers, Dolphins, Browns, Raiders, Chargers, sorry, Reece, Broncos, Vikings, Cowboys, Cardinals, Colts. Where do we even begin with this one?
Let me just start by saying, again, a comical take. And like I said, here's the thing with the national media. I think what tends to happen is, for some reason, I don't believe Chicago, they look at as a big city. They focus on the New York teams. They love the LA teams. And then, the Cowboys are America's team. If we actually got the respect as the third largest market that we did, this wouldn't happen. I mean, this is just this flagrant in terms of the disrespect. To put us, below, I think what you say, the Redskins, and to put us in that category, like, I'm telling you right now, the defense alone can win 6 games. The Bears have a top 3 defense. So it's ignorance. I feel like even talking about it, more than we need to, gives it way more credence than it does. So I'll hand it off back to Reece and to you guys to get your take on it, because I'm just disgusted.
I think that, I mean, it is a little bit of a disgusting, take. I mean, I'll definitely the Bears do have a lot more potential than the Chargers. I think the Raiders is honestly the one that takes me back.
And Reece is a Chargers fan, by the way, just so we make this
grown
clear.
Up a Chargers fan, but the Raiders is the one that takes me back the most. And what kind of proof gives you that the Browns have a higher ceiling than the Bears? Even the Falcons, like, these are just teams that don't really, in my opinion, have much potential. They're kind of stagnant. They're on the downturn, in my opinion. And this is a Bears team that, they had a down year, but, as Faiz pointed out over our first topic, this is a team that improved in just about every position, made some coaching changes that we all think are going to be very beneficial. So, I don't know what the logic is here purely. And to put them in the company of the Giants and the Jets and the Jaguars and the Redskins. I mean, the Bears just absolutely took the Redskins to town last year when they played.
Horrible.
And that was with Mitchell Trubisky, which we all know, I think, didn't even have a great season last year. I just don't see the logic in there, to be honest. Again,
it's difficult to be a national media reporter. I'm not trying to diminish that. But Jason La Canfora, he's not only saying that he's a columnist or a NFL reporter. He's saying he's an NFL insider for CBS. So you have to be really aware of this stuff. I mean, you look at Adam Schefter. I don't know if any of you guys listen to his podcast, or I'm sure all you guys follow him on Twitter, or at least see his updates. But he's obviously more of an insider than Jason La Canfora, but he is on top of things. He is always on top of things. He even said stuff about the Bears last year that I disagreed with personally, but he ended up being right about it. So I give a lot of respect to him. And I don't try to attack people's credibility, but La Canfora has been wrong about the Bears so many times. He was one of the first ones to say that there was no way that Kyle Fuller was going to re-sign with the Bears. Clearly, that ended up being false. And he's just kind of notorious for being wrong with his Bears takes. He covered Detroit Free Press for a while, so I don't know if he might be a Lions fan or something, but he's also from Baltimore, so that's kind of like, you really don't know if there is, but he's kind of he's an Adam Schefter with a Peter Bukowski mindset. I don't know if you guys know, I don't know if you know who that is, but someone we kind of mock quite a bit on our show. But ultimately, just looking at some of these teams, the Rams, they got worse at so many levels, and you can probably say they were about equal to the Bears last year. They got worse on every level. The Bears got better at every level, and they were put way ahead of them. You look at the Cowboys. That's one that I look at that really stands out to me. They were ranked, I believe, in the second tier, and the Bears really, they ran all over them last year. They really killed them, even with Mitchell Trubisky. He had
one of his best games against him.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's just hard to tell me outside of that the Lions are better than the Bears and the Vikings are better than the Bears. Neither of those two teams have beat us in the past 2 years, right? And the Vikings we beat with our backup quarterback. So, I don't know, man. I think that you're hitting it on the head when you say that even giving this the time of day is a little bit like giving him credibility that he does not deserve. And, maybe he's just doing it for clicks. And one other thing that I think that you said that really, exemplifies this point is that the media doesn't treat Chicago as this big market that we deserve to be. And I think a lot of the time they detract from us because the Packers are in the division and people are always, last year, excluding last year, the people always, put that Packers way higher than, I believe they should be. And that's not even from a Bears fan perspective. I've seen that seen by a lot of different people that they just always expect the Packers to be NFC championships or going to the Super Bowl, or it's almost every year that seems to occur. But,
No, I was just going to add to that. I think part of that reason is that a little bit of I would say like the NFL's darling. Obviously, they're a team that got grandfathered in, because if you are doing an expansion team, Green Bay is never getting a franchise. Ever.
No way.
So the fact that the Packers have a team, it's because of their history and stuff. And so I think to your point, that's absolutely accurate. And the Bears they're the boring, ugly brother, sister, if you will, of the division. And, that's why they don't get that same credence. Even though our history is rich, we have one of the most wins in NFL. I think the most wins in NFL.
Something like that.
We have higher than we can count. So, again, it does not make sense to me, which is why I talk about it so much, which is why I think it's my duty to get the word out about the Bears because nobody wants to bring it up and talk about it.
Yeah, and I think some of it does have to do, too, with, just really loving Aaron Rodgers, too, especially, now recently. Man, the national media is in love with Aaron Rodgers, and he's a great quarterback. I'll take him on this Bears team any day. But, I mean, man, and it's such a quarterback-driven league, so I get it. But, yeah, I mean, every team you're going to see at the top of these lists is going to be teams that have, those stud franchise quarterbacks, even though, I mean, with this Jason LaConfora's list, that's not really exactly the case. I mean, he's got the Chargers and the best of the rest, and that's most likely going to be Tyrod Taylor at starting quarterback. So, I mean, for even this list, that doesn't even fit the criterion.
And Reece, maybe you could give us a little bit more information on this, but when you look outside of the quarterback, right? So he's clearly betting a lot on Justin Herbert doing pretty well in his first year. I think if Justin Herbert had a year like Mitchell Trubisky did in 2018, even 2019, people would say, that's a decent year for a first-year quarterback. But outside of the quarterback, I mean, I think you would agree with me that the Bears have quite a bit more talent than the Chargers do.
Yeah, just about everywhere. I mean, the Chargers have, when healthy, a very good secondary. I've always been a big Joey Bosa fan. But, I mean, I think that he's not quite in the tier with Khalil Mack. I think sometimes he doesn't get as much respect as he should. But, yeah, he's no Khalil Mack. The Bears' defense is definitely, I think, heads and tails above them. Offensively, I'm a big Austin Eckler fan, but I think that the Bears have weapons that stack up pretty decently to the Chargers. I was at that game last year, the Bears-Chargers game, and I mean, that was just ugly, but I don't know if that's the best yeah, I don't know if that's the best determinant of that whole head-to-head comparison. But yeah, if we're just taking straight, we're looking at the depth chart of each one of these teams, the Bears have a better depth chart. That's facts.
There's so many teams on this list that also have question marks. You look at teams like clearly the Dolphins. You don't really know how their quarterback situation is going to go in the first year. Patriots, again, quarterback situation. Bengals. I mean, you have to really be coming on strong to say that the Bengals are a better team than any team almost in the league, right? Obviously, they have a lot of hope with their new quarterback, but but another team you look at is the Panthers. Man, they had a lot of changes. I know you got Christian McCaffrey, but you're betting a lot that Teddy Bridgewater is going to have a really resurgent year. And then also the Colts. I know a lot of people are really high on Chris Ballard always. And, he obviously has earned, some of the clout that he has gotten so far. But that being said, where's really the results yet to be seen? All we've seen is him win with Andrew Luck. And, there's been some good developmental pieces, but, still there's a lot of moves he could have made that he didn't make. And are we really sure that Phillip Rivers is just going to, resurge back to his, MVP possible form?
No, he's done, man. He's washed.
I mean, I think that's all there really be said about that one as well. Now we're going to be moving on to another perfect Jason La Canfora take on the Bears, which is the quarterbacks tier. Right, I'm not a fan. Neither of us are a fan of Mitchell Trubisky. Let that be made. Yeah, and I was someone who supported Mitchell Trubisky. I have a Mitchell Trubisky jersey that, funny enough, that I bought right after the draft because I was so confident that he was going to work out. That was a horrible investment, but I'm very critical of him. I think that we both have kind of rounded up that in order for him to work out, he's just going to have to wake up and kind of learn how to play quarterback at the mental level of the game. His physical traits are all there. He's a good thrower, but everything up until that point, he's pretty bad at. And, that goes even from a footwork perspective. But Jason La Canfora, he ranked Mitchell Trubisky alone by himself at the bottom with the good luck tier. And with these quarterbacks ahead of him, okay? Ryan Fitzpatrick as a veteran, Baker Mayfield, who really, I don't really get that. I know he had a good rookie year, but recently not great years. Josh Allen, I can understand a little bit of the hype behind him, but in my eyes, the possibility of him succeeding is pretty much just as much as Mitchell Trubisky. Not a big Josh Allen fan. Tyrod Taylor, which is just mind-blowing. Phillip Rivers, Jared Goff, who had, in my opinion, a worse year than Mitchell Trubisky. And then he has Matt Stafford in quote-unquote proven winners, even though he has a career losing percentage. So good luck. Mitch has been 23-18 in his first 3 years, even when you consider the Fox year. So, I mean, I guess the Bears have been getting some pretty good luck then.
Yeah, let me just say about Mitchell Trubisky that people think I'm a Mitchell Trubisky apologist. I know you guys have already claimed that you guys are not fans. I'm not, again. Do I support Mitchell Trubisky? Absolutely, and every Bears fan should. He's our he's our quarterback. I shouldn't say starting. We don't know yet, but everybody should support Mitchell Trubisky. And my only issue was if you're going to bash Mitchell Trubisky, and if you're going to say that you are not happy with Mitchell Trubisky, that's fine because he has not lived up to his number 2 pick status at all. I mean, 2018 I thought was fantastic. But then you nosedive and regress in 2019, which obviously you don't want. But I just want the truth to be out there because what do the Bears get bashed about? Drafting Mitchell Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. Just go back. I tell everybody to look at all the mocks, all the Mel Kibers, the Todd McShays. They all had Mitchell Trubisky, number 1 quarterback on the board. Yes, there's always exceptions. Got it. Did the Bears miss? Absolutely. I still say they missed by not drafting Deshaun Watson because I don't think anybody saw that coming from Patrick Mahomes. I don't know about you guys. I certainly didn't. Mm-hmm. So that's harder to see. But everybody knew Deshaun Watson, proven winner, Clemson, national champion. They made a mistake. But with Mitchell Trubisky, I think even now, after 3 years in the NFL, I still think Mitchell Trubisky did enough good things in 2018 where I feel like it completely gets overlooked. The fact that, he had the 3rd highest QBR. Bears won 12-4, won a division. He made the Pro Bowl. I get it. He was an alternate, but still made it. I think all of that gets overlooked. And you brought up a guy like Baker Mayfield's ranked above him. Baker Mayfield last year had such a stacked roster and didn't do squat.
And offensively.
Offensively. 21 interceptions. Like, if Mitchell Trubisky did that, there would be Bears fans with pitchforks outside his house. He threw 21 interceptions. So again, there's guys that get a different type of treatment than Mitchell Trubisky, even though I don't believe they've had as good as a year that he did in 2018. So to me, again, if you want to rank him low in terms of the bottom third of the NFL, you can. I have Mitchell Trubisky ranked around 25 to 30 in that range. Just again based off of the performance last season. But do I think he's the absolute worst bottom barrel quarterback in the league behind guys like Tyrod Taylor? Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think that, just putting him in a tier by himself and saying good luck, I mean, that's definitely a little bit of a rough ride. Saying you'd rather take, Ryan Fitzpatrick, I don't really agree with that. I mean, obviously, I think Mitchell Trubisky has potential. I was disappointed in what I saw with them last year, and I think, part of the reason why Austin and I had such, great winning totals for the Bears, such great record predictions last year was because we thought that Mitch would take an even bigger step forward from what we saw in 2018, where it's like, oh, this progress is just going to continue because, the Fox, the couple games he played in 2017 with John Fox, that's not really, that's just, you can wipe that clean. That doesn't really count. 2018, it seemed like him and Matt Nagy's system really just clicked. And then I think that, there was kind of a myriad of factors that played into why things went downhill. Obviously, one of them that's not talked about, and you brought up earlier, Austin, is the fact that he was injured. People like to overlook that, and it wasn't on his throwing arm, but still, it's something that you're thinking about. And when you're thinking about something while you're playing, it's going to distract you. It's going to make you hesitate. And, I think that eventually we saw good spurts of what Mitch needs to be. There's times where he was tucking the ball and running, making better decisions. I think ultimately the worst part about Mitch last year was just he was kind of tunnel vision to Allen Robinson a little bit. So teams always knew where he was going, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that this is a little bit of a rough shake for him. I think there's definitely quarterbacks on here that, I would take, Trubisky over. I'd take Trubisky over Phillip Rivers right now, honestly. Just on potential alone, I think that Phillip Rivers he looked like Mitchell Trubisky last year, but he couldn't even tuck the ball and run. He was making equally as bad of reads, and he's like a statue in the pocket. At least Mitchell Trubisky has the ability to move the pocket, or if things break down, scramble and get loose, and which I think is probably one of his better characteristics. And yeah, once again, with this Jason LaCanfora list, just the tiers. You brought up Matthew Stafford, doesn't even have a winning record. How can he be a proven winner? Calling Kyler Murray a rising star.
That's a stretch.
I think it's a little early. I think Kyler Murray can be good, but yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of bad to break down there.
I have been someone who I think as of late has been very negative on Mitchell Trubisky. 100% I own up to that. I am not a huge Mitchell Trubisky believer. I think that in order for him to get a second contract, he's really going to have to hit his head on the ground or hit his head somewhere and just all of a sudden learn how to play quarterback. I don't foresee that happening. That being said, there's a lot of Bears fans and national media out there that takes every single one of the Bears' offensive issues and blames it on Mitchell Trubisky. Believe me, I wish that Mitchell Trubisky in all actuality was this, good luck quarterback, because that means bringing in Nick Foles could probably take us to the Super Bowl because Nick Foles would be that much better than him. But the offensive issues did not start and stop at Mitchell Trubisky last year. That has to be something that a lot of Bears fans need to come to grips with. It's the same thing with Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard, absolutely, great move that we moved on from him. I was a huge supporter of that move. I was not a fan. Obviously, we've talked in the past about how, we missed him a little bit last year because of some of his abilities that, David Montgomery didn't have. But ultimately, good move getting a new running back. Mitchell Trubisky is the same way. Just even if we got, let's say we get Matt Stafford on our offense, just miracle, one day they just trade their picks for him and we get Matt through Stafford. The offense is still going to have issues. And that's what a lot of Bears fans need to come to grips with. That being said, Mitchell Trubisky, obviously there's a lot of players on this list he's worse than, but you cannot tell me in any way, shape, or form that he is worse than Ryan Fitzpatrick. And if this list, holds out, right, in the way that LaCanfora is posting it up to, would you really trade Mitchell Trubisky for Ryan Fitzpatrick? I don't think anybody in the NFL would make that trade. I don't think anybody in the NFL would trade Mitchell Trubisky for Tyrod Taylor. Even Phillip Rivers, you bring a great point, Reece. They're kind of their careers are kind of intersecting right now. They had very similar totals. And just, you hold out a little bit of hope for Mitchell Trubisky. But,
and we talked about too. We talked about the offensive line's troubles. That can't be
100%.
How is a quarterback supposed to perform well when the offensive line isn't performing well? And I think one of the bigger issues was that the offensive line couldn't really do well in the run game. So teams were stacking the box, and then it created obvious passing scenarios, and teams were then bringing the blitz, putting Mitch under pressure, and that's not allowing him to make his best decisions, not giving him any time to make any kind of reads, and that's why he was always dumping it off to Allen Robinson. So it's kind of a cascading effect. It's kind of like a domino effect, in a way where, once one thing kind of goes wrong, then, since Mitch didn't have the great kind of like mental fortitude that they need him to have, then even more went wrong. But yeah, you can't blame it all on Mitch at all.
Absolutely. And I think, a little piece of Bears news we can throw in here is today I saw that Mitchell Trubisky and Allen Robinson have been working out 4 times a week throwing the ball. So I'm sure this next season, even if there's all 11 guys on Allen Robinson at the same time, we will see Mitchell Trubisky in the end zone still throw the ball up to him regardless of what's occurring around him.
I won't hate that for my fantasy team. I'll tell you that right now. I had Allen Robinson every league, so.
There you go. All right.
Smart choice.
So, one final, take that we're going to be kind of going over is Pete Prisco's top 10, NFL players. I believe NFL Network's top 10 for this year is supposed to be coming out relatively soon. We'll see if that actually happens with everything going on. But, he put Chandler Jones ahead of Khalil Mack. I know Chandler Jones had a big year. But that is a horrible take. And then he also, an equally as egregious take, he put Michael Thomas above him as well.
Yeah. So let me talk about this list. Pete Prisco, man, he's another one of these guys where I just feel like these guys just fuel off of, just giving these flagrant takes. Chandler Jones, again, he had a great year last year, but he does not belong in the same conversation as Khalil Mack. Absolutely not.
Does he even belong top 10 is the question.
No, absolutely not. He doesn't even belong top 10. I don't see how that happens. And here's the thing. Aaron Donald, they have here at number 2, who, again, Aaron Donald, even Pro Football Focus today, I saw on Twitter, they've on the list, and Aaron Donald, they had him higher than Patrick Mahomes. They had him number 1. And so I look at Khalil Mack in the same category or league as Aaron Donald. And so if you're putting Aaron Donald at 2, and this isn't a list based off of quarterbacks, and it's not, then Khalil Mack, to me, deserves to be in the top 5. I think at his best, he's better than, you can say, easily a handful of guys on this list. So 9 is, to me, way too low. Again, I think there's some biases here with quarterbacks still. But that's just where I'm at. Again, Stephon Gilmore had a great year last year, Defensive Player of the Year. But again, has he been doing it as consistently as Khalil Mack? I don't think so. So that's just, how I feel about it. But again, the one flagrant one is Chandler Jones.
And I'd say the advantage that just about everyone on this list besides Aaron Donald has on Khalil Mack is the fact that you can't double team any of those other players. Like you brought up Stephon Gilmore. Like how are you can't double team a corner. He's going to have his fair shot on like every single play. And yeah, if you're going to put Aaron Donald all the way up there, I mean, Khalil Mack has to follow him. I understand the argument between them both. I'd favor Khalil Mack a little bit. Probably from being able to watch him a little bit, I get to see just how ridiculous of an athlete, how ridiculously like football smart he is. Always going for the strip sack. He's an absolute game breaker. And I think that put him at number 9. Yeah, I think that's purely just based off of a decrease in stats. And I think that most Bears fans realize that he didn't see that decrease in the stats because of a lack of performance or anything. It was purely based off of what other teams were doing scheme-wise against him.
I mean, you look at Aaron Donald on this list, right? He also had a huge regression, statistically speaking, this past season, right? And a lot of that, I attributed to Ndamukong Suh, obviously losing him. He took up a lot of players, and they allowed, Aaron Donald to stunt around him. And, defensive line is very much a team game as much as offensive line is, right? And when you look at, Khalil Mack, he was kind of the reverse of Aaron Donald, where he was taking up all the guys, and he was always the one on the field who got all of the attention. And I don't think people realize just how much teams offensively had to adjust their game plan around Khalil Mack. You saw teams that, was never using RPO start, absolutely utilizing it almost 100% of the time, where you saw play action increase so significantly. And I think that's where this, disconnect when you look at a player like Khalil Mack, and then you compare him to, someone like Chandler Jones, or even Zadarius Smith, or Shaquille Barrett on Tampa Bay is that those players, they're good players. They're pretty good, right? But they're not players that are good enough that teams are going to adjust their entire offensive scheme around. So you see them have higher success rates because of that. Khalil Mack, he is just someone that you have to account for on every single play, similar to Aaron Donald. And he needs to be higher. He needs to be higher. It's just, there's no excuse for 9th overall. And again, I think his statistics went down, but when you look at the other players on the Bears who became so much more productive, look at Nick Williams, right? Someone who was a no-name, right? Comes in, once Akeem Hicks and Eddie Goldman start having injuries, and all of a sudden has, a pretty big year. I think he had like 6 or 7 sacks and looked like a monster. He's not going to look that way in Detroit, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And the other thing here, too, is not even just like Bears related. I can think of 5 or 6 players that I take over Chandler Jones as a top 10. Where's Julio Jones in this list? Where's guys like DeAndre Hopkins? They only have Michael Thomas as the only receiver here. So, again, I don't know what Pete Prisco is smoking, but I want some of it because it clearly it's working. But, yeah, I can think of a lot more players that I would put here besides Chandler Jones.
And, I think that's Reece, do you have something to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think that's a very fair point. I mean, there's a lot of debate of even putting Michael Thomas at 4, I think right, and I think a lot of people take other receivers over him. I mean, you brought up Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, So, yeah, I mean, there's with all these lists, you're always, and of course, everyone has their own opinion. That's what makes sports, great. And covering national media is tough. And football is a game that sometimes putting things into numbers can be tough because there's so much more that goes into the game than just numbers. But yeah, this ranking, I don't agree with it at all.
And here's the thing that I think a lot of national media reporters don't get right. And I think when they look at teams' records and like when they're doing their predictions, they think about how good each team was the previous year and then try to include some of the changes that they remember. That being said, they never look at the matchups, right? When you're doing a schedule prediction, I think the number one thing you got to look at is the matchups because that's how you see, the Raiders beat the Bears last year. Obviously, they had a backup quarterback, but the Raiders, John Gruden, obviously does a lot of play action, a lot of RPO, lots of things that are useful for neutralizing pass rush. And, that was just enough when we had Chase Daniel and Mitchell Trubisky was injured. So, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of bad takes about the Bears. We've been critical first and foremost, but you're going to see people be a lot more critical than us. And a lot of the time it's because they're not that informed about the Bears. So, don't try to get too upset by it, even though it is extremely upsetting. But that being said, before we round out the show, Faiz, do you want to give us a couple predictions you have for the Bears in 2020?
Yeah, so like I already mentioned, I have the Bears going 10-6. I do have them finishing second in the division to the Packers, who I have at 11-5. But hear me out. The NFL has an extra playoff spot this year. I do believe the Bears will get a wild card spot. So I do have them going there. And again, you just brought up the Raiders game. A game, by the way, they should have never lost. So thank you for bringing that up. And so you take the Raiders game. I'm just saying, take the Raiders game. You take the Chargers game where we missed the damn kick. You're 10-6. But I'm just saying, like, we weren't that far off. 2 games, you go from 8-8 mediocre to 10-6. So
how about the Eagles game where the Eagles had an 8-minute drive at the end of the game too?
Oh my goodness, yeah, the Eagles game too. So they were in so many close games last year. Honestly, a couple balls go our way, a couple throws, and we obviously make the playoffs. So for this year. I do have the Bears making the playoffs. Can I see them winning the division? Absolutely. Absolutely, I can. Let's give some hot takes here for the people, so I'll just do it. In terms of who wins the starting quarterback job in training camp, I do believe Mitchell Trubisky will win the starting job. The only reason I say that, or I shouldn't say the main reason I say that is because I feel like the Bears will do everything in their power to let Mitch win. And I'm hoping he proves it to them that he deserves to win. Because once you go to Nick Foles, the Mitchell Trubisky experiment in Chicago is done. Unless Nick Foles gets hurt, you're not moving forward with Mitchell Trubisky, and he's out of here after the season. So my thinking is what the Bears are probably looking at is, listen, if this is really the end of Mitchell Trubisky, let's give him the shot that he deserves, which is, I've heard this too, that they're going to let Mitch have the first snaps in practice and training camp. And let's see what he can do. And then if he flops, you bring in Foles, and, hopefully we can go on the magic carpet ride like he took the Eagles on and win the Super Bowl. But if he doesn't, then, Mitch is out of here. So I do think that he wins the starting quarterback job. And then I'm really high on David Montgomery this year. I think he turns into one of the better running backs in the NFL. I don't have a particular take in terms of like numbers or whatnot, but I definitely do know that I think he will have a much, much better year. A lot of guys think Josh Jacobs is better. I think David Montgomery would do just as much as Josh Jacobs if he got the same amount of opportunity, and Matt Nagy, decided to, run the football once in a while. So just a couple of hot takes for me. Again, it's not super hot. And one last one I'll give you is Mitchell Trubisky could do the exact same thing Josh Allen is doing in Buffalo right now. If had the coaching, the run game, the offense, and what's happening in Buffalo, I think Mitchell Trubisky – I don't think Josh Allen's that talented, by the way. I just think they know how to use him. Yeah, they know how to use him. Maybe he has a little bigger arm, but that's about it. So enough hot takes for me, by the way. Go ahead, Faiz.
There you go. So we thank you so much for coming on the show. Obviously, any of our listeners who haven't checked you out on YouTube yet, you should pretty much just type in any Bears news that comes up, and he'll have one of the first videos, so you'll see him there. But otherwise, go ahead, check out his YouTube channel. And we're excited to finally post up this video, and I'm sure a lot of our fans are thankful for you coming on the show as well.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure. Thank you guys, Austin. Thank you, Reece, for having me, man. I appreciate it. And hopefully we can do this again soon.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Bear down.
All right, man. Take it easy.